also was like doing some like paperwork.
Oh, late night? Because we
No, wait,
watched
you
this like
did?
in the evening after you went to sleep.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I
This is a
thought.
different one. This is a
Oh god, for because I recognize the two people you guys saying.
this is
Or
on
no, I
groom.
mean not the two.
Yeah, this was
Yeah.
an earlier one on grooming, sex abuse, and Bishop Robert Barron. So, because they talk exactly like what you're talking about. Like, just a sec. All right, here we go.
Thank you for having me on your program.
Well, thank you for saying yes. With the I'm trying to think if it was my last podcast. It was. So my last podcast, and I'll post the link in the video description, was with Paul and Kristen Shaka from the Angry Catholic Show, and we did a pretty, I thought, thorough deep dive into some of Bishop Barron's writings and activities and issues and problems. I wanted to have Gene on because of his knowledge, and also because he actually wrote about Bishop Barron. This is 2019 article, so not very old. So I wanted to go over this with him as well. If you don't mind, Gene, can we just do a quick recap of a little bit of what I talked about last time? Is that okay?
Sure, please.
And then I would like to get your reaction because you're you're very honest, but you're also very knowledgeable. So let's see, share screen, share. Can you see that, Gene?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great.
And
So,
that's Father Kolchik's church.
wow. Okay, so you know all this stuff.
Oh, I know the banner that the media made out to be a gay flag, and they tried to make him out to be homophobic and
Yeah.
uh, almost psychotic.
Yeah. So I did recently interview Father Kolchak, God bless him. And that sort of got me interested in Bishop Barron because Father Kolchak was there around the same time as Bishop Barron. I think Barron is older, but that kind of got me interested in addressing some issues with Bishop Barron. And people have accused me, and I think of others, of um, you know making someone guilty by association. So Bishop Barron is from Chicago, and at the time of Cardinal Bernardine, who's quite notorious, I would say now. I think a lot since his death, a lot of truth has come out about him. But in and you can confirm this, Gene, is that I mean, apostolic succession is important in terms of the priesthood, but also in terms of bishops, who ordained you and where you went to seminary and such. So I think this is all part of Bishop Barron's story that he came out of the pretty corrupt Catholic Church in Chicago under Cardinal Bernardine.
Well, yes, when you look at certain prelates today, to understand them, I'm almost reminded of, remember during World War II, when the Germans were fighting the Allies, when they did a research, they looked into the background of Patton to find out how he thinks, how he behaves, what's he going to do. We did the same thing with Rommel. Well, just as you do that militarily, because that's my background, as a military chaplain, I take that same approach when I look at various priests and bishops.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at their background. Who consecrated them? Who laid hands on them? Who nominated them? And when you look at that, who promoted them? Who made them the vocation director, the vicar general, the chancellor? Who's behind them? And you find that ordinarily you're not going to be promoted in this organization unless you're befriended by the person who's advancing you. And what is that relationship? What do you have in common? So that's where I think it's valid to look at someone who's been consecrated and see who is behind them. Who, for example, when you look at Dolan in Phoenix, in his relationship with McElroy, and should one be surprised that the people in Phoenix now are going through such a difficult time after Tom Olmsted, retired, and they're stuck now with this person who is very, very pro LGBTQ and wants to bless, gay marriages and so forth. So that's why I think it's valid when you talk about guilt by association. I think there's something to it.
I agree 100%. So here is a young Bishop Barron with Wilton Gregory. So he was also in that Bernardine
You see
circle
this?
or orbit. And of course,
Yeah,
Wilton
so
Gregory.
So this is like back in like the 80s, 70s, late 70s, right? You know who Cardinal Wilton Gregory is? He's the current he's the current Archbishop of Washington D.C. Okay, and
right,
then you have Bishop Barron here. Like these people all know each other. That's my point.
right, yeah, they're all
Uh,
friends.
I don't know what you can say about him. He was USCCB president during the Boston scandal. Advocated for that much touted Dallas charter. I think he put McCarrick involved. McCarrick was somehow involved in that. Can you believe it? Gregory put McCarrick
It's
in
so
with
interesting.
sort of these
Like
reforms of the Catholic Church after the wake of that
Abismo,
scandal.
Yeah.
And Gregory was
like
Archbishop of Atlanta, Georgia.
this is so sophisticated. This is so organized. Like there are
Now
groups
you
of
get it.
people
Yeah.
like that are joining the Catholic Church that don't believe in the Catholic Church.
Yep.
It's clergy. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's not an accident. That's what I'm trying to say. Trying to show you, like when again, when you meet these people and then you understand like how the system actually works, there's there's
You
there's
can't.
nothing that just it's not like, oh, we have like a whole bunch of people, random Catholics that are joining and random Catholics that are becoming priests and random Catholics that are being made bishops, and it's all the Holy Spirit. That's not what's happening.
Right.
It's
So
all
like
deliberate because it happens over a long period of time. These people get groomed over years and decades. You get what I mean?
right. Now, trying to think like these like priests and bishops, they like some priests read 10,000 books in their lives. Like they have access to like the Summa Theologica, like all the information they know. They can talk to exorcists to be like sodomy is like the worst thing you can ever do, and it's like they have all this. Like once you're a bishop, you have like or I mean, at any point like anyone with a device, but like or before the internet, bishops at least had like insane access to like information. You know what I'm saying? Like they know like a bishop, could talk to like has insider knowledge of what the exorcists are saying, right? To each other and like with the Vatican and saying like they have access to the archives and they have greater access of information than we do. And it's like they just get it wrong. They just choose evil.
Yeah,
You know
they
what I'm
don't care.
saying?
You think
Yeah.
so? Cardinal Bernardine here or Wilton Gregory? Do you think they care about orthodoxy? They don't. That's the
Right.
thing. That
Like
if you're right, they have a lot of access if they want it. But like
right
Joe
where
Biden can
like
be
out of
given
any
all the information if he cares, but he doesn't care.
like you know how I say like ignorance is a mitigating factor when it comes to like whatever, when it comes to like go like but they out of any people there is, bishops would not like the least amount of ignorance. Like they can't use ignorance for any
Yeah,
for
so
any like
yep, St.
thing.
Thomas makes the
You know what I'm saying?
distinction. Yeah, they're not invincibly ignorant. The only
Right.
potential exception from culpability is invincible ignorance. Then there's other kinds of ignorance outside of invincible ignorance. These people are not invincibly ignorant. They know
Right.
enough and they've been entrusted to know because of their
It's the
position.
opposite of invincible ignorance.
Yeah,
On the other. If it was a spectrum, they would be on the furthest side, or the furthest away from invincible ignorance.
yeah,
And especially like the more information, the more you have access to, the more God expects you to not be ignorant. You know what
correct.
I'm saying? Yeah. It's crazy.
The mystery for me is why would God allow evil to this degree in within positions of his own church. That's where
Like
like it
what?
makes my head spin. I'm just like, you know, clearly like I don't think it's mysterious what good is, but what evil is definitely mysterious to me.
Like why? Like what?
What
Yeah,
I mean is
like
like I don't think there's a rational explanation. Evil is not rational is the thing. To not be rational is to be evil. So we're under no
right,
obligation to understand why they're doing what they do, but we are kind of under obligation to recognize that what they're doing is in fact evil because it's not rational.
right. Like why? Like it's kind of why would I mean, God has no obligation to give grace, but He has done it. So why, like, I'm trying, like, that's going to be a mystery to us. Like, why does this person get a gift from God, and these people don't get a gift from God? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Why is grace here, but not there? Why did God leave Constantinople? You know what I'm saying? Why did He let that happen? I mean, I'm sure, there's like kind of like a butterfly effect, you know what I'm saying? But like, why did God permit Pope Clement the Third, I think, for not like catechizing China? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um,
I don't think
yeah,
I think it's like, well, God might have gifted people and put them in a position, but people are choosing not to do it. So that's what I'm saying is that it's mysterious to me. Yeah, why would God, like maybe that's just the way God is. He's going to try to do the best for everybody even in the circumstances even when he knows that they're going to choose the evil option. I don't know.
yeah.
And then they get judged
Honestly,
after the fact. I don't know.
yeah,
Quite well known for being an LGBTQ advocate in the church. And then after uh, McCarrick's successor, Worrell, left, he went into Washington, D.C. So this is how that all works.
But if you look at it again in Washington, I was on the phone with Father Michael Breezy. Michael Breezy is a priest, even before he became a priest, was very much involved with caring for the poor and the needy and the homeless. And because of his apostolic work as a layperson, he was encouraged, to become a priest because he was doing all this priestly work, as a layperson. And he was ordained for the Archdiocese of Washington. But then, like Father Mark White,
Hmm.
who was ordained by McCarrick, and then left Richmond because he didn't want to work for Worrell, and so the same thing with Breezy. Breezy confronted his ordinary, Wilton Gregory, and he said, "Look, I got this report from someone from Atlanta, and it disturbs me because they're calling you the African Queen." And he said, I had no idea what that meant. So I went to some of my African American friends and I said, "Can you explain that to me? What that's about?" And they said that, well, that's a derogatory term in the African American community about a gay black person.
Of course. Yeah.
So when Father Breezy confronted, then he wrote a very, very, very respectful letter to Gregory. He says, "Your Eminence, I'm disturbed. I received this report about you, and accusing you of calling you the African Queen. And I have to ask you, I mean, be honest with me. Have you ever engaged in sexual relations with other men?" Well, Father Breezy, he's suspended now, and uh, Wilton Gregory is leading the very, very comfortable life, while Father Breezy is living from, you know, very, very, very humbly, I must say. I visited him in his home, and he couldn't even give me a cup of coffee. He was
Oh boy.
I did get a bottle of water from him, but I mean, these people who are suspended and canceled by people like Gregory and Supich and others, they're not really living very comfortable lives. Let me tell you.
No, no. I interviewed Father Mark White. He's a good man.
Oh,
Here
they
to
all are.
Yeah.
Mark White, Paul Kolchik,
Yep.
Michael Breezy. You may want to consider. interviewing Father Michael Breezy sometime. I mean, these
Okay.
guys are authentic. In other words, they entered the priesthood not because they didn't like girls or because their parents forced them to become priests or they got into trouble or something. They really felt
The
they had a
African
vocation, a
Queen.
calling to come follow me. And what disturbs me
So
is that when I speak with them, when I visit with them, I'm just so distraught because these priests, these canceled priests, to me are so much like, you know, Jesus and his.
So Wilton Gregory's nickname, and this I can confirm, they call him the African Queen. Do you know Cardinal Wuerl's nickname?
no, I don't know his nickname.
They call him Donald, or they call him Donna Cardinal Wuerl, because his
Anna
first name is
Cardinal.
Donald, right? But they call him Donna instead, like Madonna.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So
Disciples. So they,
they're kind of calling him a transformer.
Yeah. No, I mean that's the thing. The So it's because most of the seminarians, while they were the archbishops of those seminaries, they're all gay. The majority of them are gay in the seminary. So they're the ones who came up with the nickname. You get what I mean? It's like an
Yeah.
inside joke. So how do we learn about it? How do people, on the peripheries know about it? Because the seminarians are the ones saying it. Because in the inside, it's like all out in the open, right? Because they all feel secure, right, inside the seminary. Because they have, their archbishop, their, you know, overseer is gay. You get what I mean? So they all feel secure
Yeah.
within that, right? They aren't going to get axed. They're free to be themselves because Donna Wuerl is in charge. You get it?
Yeah.
And then it's like a like aggrandizing thing where Donna Wuerl, he feels appreciated and affirmed, right? Because all of his gay seminarians and his gay priests are like, you know, they're affectionate towards him. So then he's more affectionate to the gay guys. You see what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just this repeating
Yeah.
cycle.
Is there any way for like the laity to like
No, we don't have power.
pressure?
No,
Yeah. I
they
know.
just ignore us, dude. and and
I know, and that's how it works. That's how it's set up to be.
Yeah, and the
It,
biggest problem is the buck does stop somewhere, and that's with the Pope.
right.
But Pope John Paul is the one who elected McCarrick to the cardinalate. He's the one who made Wilton Gregory a bishop. He's the one who made Donald Wuerl a cardinal. It was all Pope
What
John Paul II.
what position can like what like we're obviously laity is allowed to like encourage other laity to like pray and have like times to pray together, and it's like I'm trying to think of like I mean obviously like a priest or a state power, for example Austria can pray have 10,000 people pray the rosary or 50,000 people pray the rosary and not get invaded by Russia, right? um I forget which war, but like a century ago, or not, or forget what decade it was, but like what like I'm that seems like the only thing to do is like have like the job of the nuns and monks now on like the laity when it comes to like the divine office, like praying and like fasting. You get what I'm saying, Abizma?
Yeah, I
Like
guess.
just appealing to God directly. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
To
that's why like Protestantism was a thing during the Reformation time. During the
yeah.
1500s, like it wasn't just like a one-off, two-off gay popes. There was like more than a handful of gay popes during the 1500s. The 1500s was a very tumultuous time like the majority of the popes only reigned for like 4 years. So there was like at least like a dozen popes during that 100 years, and like half of them were homosexuals, like openly.
Was it because of like so many people were like praying to God to smite to do precatory prayers?
No, I mean, what I'm saying is that
Oh,
there's a lot of converging factors which led to the Protestant Reformation, right? Where
right.
because the authorities were so corrupt, like what's a rational, what's an ordinary lay faithful supposed to do, right? So then they came up with theologies that no, there's no way that the Catholic Church can be the real church because of all this gay corruption, basically. There's something wrong institutionally. That's their thesis. Like to me, that's what I was saying earlier. Like it's a mystery to me how, like Pope John Paul II, everybody likes to talk about, oh, how he was this progressive yet conservative pope who was charismatic and all this stuff. But he's the idiot. The pope's number one job is elevating bishops. That's how you manage a church in a hierarchical church. But how could his selection of bishops be just so terrible? All of his all the heretics that you see out right now was Cardinal Mueller, Cardinal Marx, Cardinal Schonborn, all the freaking German bishops, right? And the cardinals, all these gay cardinals in America, right? Mahoney, McCarrick, Worrell, Tobin. They were all made bishops by John Paul II. You get what I mean? So like John Paul II cared much more about being like this public traveling pope rather than focusing on what his job was supposed to be, which was to make sure that he's going to qualify and he's going to select the right priests to become bishops. So he failed, in my book. I have serious doubts whether he's a saint. That's it. I have major doubts. He may be canonized, but he was canonized by a process that was completely different from what the sainthood process was prior to Vatican II. He was made a saint by the same process that he revised. He removed the devil's advocate and he changed the requirement from 3 miracles to 1 miracle.
Yeah, hold on one second. I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back.
Alright, we'll continue.
They are so
Remove
authentic.
the devil's
Whereas these other
advocate and
people, I
obey
think, are a
one
bunch of frauds.
miracle to
Yeah, I
become
agree.
blessed.
Here is a Gregory with McCarrick. Now, of course, according to them, they didn't know anything. They didn't. Barron didn't know anything. Gregory didn't know anything. Dolan didn't know anything. They all knew nothing. It was all a shock, complete shock. And I've been around Catholic prelates and actually, had conversations with them about abuse in their diocese. And when it actually, of course, hits, the media, the mainstream media, they act like they're shocked. They all know. They know everything. Bishops, bishops know when a priest sneezes in his diocese. They know everything.
They really do. I supervised 150 chaplains serving with the Marines between Yuma, Arizona, and the Horn of Africa, which takes in about 2/3 of the world. a large diocese, you might say. And I would visit those chaplains, every one of them individually, at least once a year. I gave them, each of them had an opportunity to sit down with me privately, sit down, discuss, how's your ministry going? Is there something I could do to help, enhance your ministry? What have you? What are your concerns? So you're right, Joseph, they know what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
But they know too that they're part of the problem, that they are covering it up. They know that if they had to discipline their priests, they would be hypocritical, because their priests know that in many cases they're guilty of the same things that their priests are getting in trouble for.
Oh yeah. I was talking to one of these canceled priests once, and he said that bishops, when they get together, all they talk about is priests. And when priests get together, all they talk about is bishops. So they all know what each other is doing.
Oh, they do. But you see, this is why, when I read, various news reports and articles,
Dude, it's such
I'm
a
looking at it
mystery.
not as a layperson.
Dude,
I'm
Bismo.
looking at as an insider, someone who studied
I know, right?
with Dolan, with
Dude,
DiNardo, with
they're having
Supich,
they're
with
having
Harvey,
like
with
synods
Neinstead, someone who sat
every
next
day,
to
you know what I'm
Donald
saying?
Wuerl in a graduate seminar at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas. I know them from the inside, so I know how corrupt they really are and how self-serving they are.
Yeah. Here is Bishop Barron with Cardinal Kupich, the Archbishop of Chicago, the former Archdiocese of Bernardino. Kupich is one of the proteges of McCarrick. So you don't rise in the Catholic Church unless, I hate to say it, but unless you're dirty, unless you know the secrets and you're willing to keep them, and you're willing to keep quiet and cover them up.
Absolutely. They do not want someone blowing the whistle. When I was made a Monsignor, I thought, wow, they're looking, all the hard work that I undertook, the accomplishments that I had over the years in the military, in serving as a priest in the diocese and then the military. Well, later on, I wondered, hold it, did they really make me a Monsignor because of my accomplishments in the priesthood and my ministry, my talents, or did they promote me thinking it would make me, want to become a bishop and then make me look the other way and compromise, my integrity and be part of the cover-up? Well, it wasn't long after, it could have been within a year from the time I was made a Monsignor to the time my article came out in America Magazine about when I made a passing reference to the 5 priests who were arrested and prosecuted in the military, 1 for pedophilia and 4 for homosexual predation. At that point, I was history. They realized that making me a Monsignor was a big, big, big mistake. No, you're right. But you see, when it comes to Supich, when it comes to Dolan, when it comes to these other prelates who are promoted by people like McCarrick and Gregory and others, and Laurie, they're promoted because they basically are believed to be able to maintain the church's code of silence.
Exactly. And I've talked to a priest who actually was in grade school and high school and then seminary with someone who later became a bishop. And he had some interesting things to say, and he didn't articulate it this way, but the way that I sort of processed what he was saying is the young men are selected actually kind of early on who's going to take the bishop track. And it seems to be guys who are amendable, who are, I don't know, how would you say, Gene? They pick out, I guess, people who go with the flow, who aren't a troublemaker in seminary, who they find somebody that's malleable.
Well, yes, but also someone who shares their sexual orientation.
Okay.
You think that Peter Harmon would have been the rector of the North American College if he and his Bishop Ryan and then his successor Lucas were not close? And when I say close, I mean really close. I mean, this is look at Adam Park, who was Harmon's vice rector, who was ordained by McCarrick. And you see what happens, is that in many of these cases, these bishops, the people who are bishops now, were faculty members before, and they groomed and they preyed upon these seminarians. So if you look at someone like Wilton Gregory, you know, you know and you look at these bishops today and cardinals, you will often find, if you really do like a forensic investigation,
Yeah.
I mean, a real forensic, I mean, tracing it back, you will find that there's a connection. And trust me, you always are going to find they share the same sexual orientation.
Yeah. When I lived down in LA for a while, this is about 20 years ago, but and I befriended a seminarian at St. John's in Camarillo. He left. He eventually left, but thank God. But one of the things he told me that I was really shocked is when one of the questions his spiritual director would ask him is he wanted details about his sexual fantasies. And I was like, well, that's none of his business. And I thought, well, this is fishing. So
Absolutely.
this priest is fishing to see, like, well, what is he thinking about? And I was like, wow, that's pretty bad. That's like grooming or looking for dirt on somebody at a very early stage in their formation in the priesthood.
Well, there's a case recently that I was involved with, involving two seminarians. Interestingly, uh, they attended St. John Paul II Seminary in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Where the rector is Father Carter Griffin, who was also in Rome with Father Adam Park, also a priest of the Archdiocese of Washington. And both of the seminarians allege that Carter Griffin came on to them. Now, interestingly, the one was straight. He made it through there and went to the St. Mary's Seminary in Baltimore because he was studying for Baltimore.
Do you get this, right, Supreme?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not, like, I wasn't being hyperbolic, right? These are all stories that people in the inside, they all know. Like, this priest, Father Golmulka, he used to teach at the North American College, right? He's
Only then,
he's and he's worked for these people at different points in time. You know what I mean? So when you're part of the machine, you hear these stories, dude. Like
Right.
it's all pretty like, so that gives you clue into, oh, like if it happened one time and then you hear it happen another time, you hear about this one seminarian who was abused and groomed, what's going on there, right? And then you hear about, you start to hear more of the story, how, oh yeah, somebody did tell the bishop but then the bishop didn't do anything. You see what I mean? And it turns out, well, the bishop is friends with this other bishop who is known for grooming his seminarians. You get what I'm saying? It's like, what else are you gonna, like, that explains it, right? If you had these bishops and this kind of like gay grooming culture, this twink culture has existed always there, then you put two and two together when, during the 60s and 70s, when you have like an influx of homosexual priests in the seminary, like the stupider of them, the more predatory ones, they're the ones getting preyed upon by the bishops, so they think it's okay and they start, you know, molesting children. Do you get what I mean? It's not the other way around where it's like, oh, how do we end up with all these freaking predators during the 70s and 80s? You see what I mean? Where did they come from? You know what I mean? Oh, like, what a surprise. I didn't even know. You know what I mean? No, it's because there was already a grooming culture within the Catholic authority, the Catholic hierarchy.
Right. It's just seems like it's like it is like a fucking mafia. It's like like an internal hierarchy within the hierarchy
Yeah.
that like it's a hidden hierarchy inside. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And it's the price of it. Let's say you are a heterosexual Orthodox seminarian, or you want to be and even priests. It's the price of admission to not say anything about it and to not call it out, or else they'll literally get rid of you within a blink of an eye.
to be sexually harassed by a transitional deacon, Christopher Pinto, who came on to him. And again, when he reported this, it was all covered up. And in the end, they got rid of him. Okay, his name is Carl Disher. I can say that now because even the letter that his parents wrote to Archbishop Christophe Pierre reporting this was all covered up, and they got rid of him. But they kept, Griffin is still in place. But the other seminarian who he came on to, I was informed, was not straight, but he had a homosexual orientation. But so you see, even the homosexual is going to be more prone to be approached by the gay rector or gay faculty member because he feels he has a better chance of this young man sleeping with him than if he tries to turn or come on to a straight guy.
Mm-hmm.
But then you see, if you're gay and I come on to you and I'm the rector and you turn me down, you say, well, Monsignor, you're not my type, but I'm worried that you're going to report me to the Archbishop or to the media or report me for sexual harassment. Okay. Well, you know what's going to happen to you next? You're going to be called into the chancery. And you know what they're going to say to you? Well, listen, we're going to have to let you go because we found out that you're a homosexual and we're worried that you might be a threat to young men in the church that you may be serving someday. Well, hold it. You're not a threat. You wanted to lead a celibate life. Even though you had a homosexual orientation, you wanted to lead a celibate life. But the only reason we're getting rid of you is because you did not want to give into the homosexual advances of the
Yeah, they
rector.
gaslight in order to protect themselves.
And that's what's going on today.
My goodness,
that's
so
many
vicious.
seminaries.
So the few gay
I believe it.
priests
Now here is
that live up to the celibate oath, they just get weeded out.
Yeah, like when the propositioning fails, they just get rid of him anyways to cover their own ass. You get it? Because a seminarian doesn't have any power. They don't have any canonical rights.
I believe that this was at Bishop Barron's consecration, I think you call it, in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. And here is the notorious Cardinal Mahoney. He wasn't even supposed to be making public appearances, but he does all the time because of all of the sex abuse in the Archdiocese there and his involvement in all of the cover-ups. So it's kind of like everybody looks the other way and doesn't know. I guess it doesn't notice. I don't know.
Well, Mahoney was the cardinal when I was stationed at Naval Station Ventura County, Naval Base Ventura County, north of LA, right here, a few miles from St. John's in Camarillo.
Yep.
And bad news, as of course in when he was in office, the Archdiocese paid out $660 million in abuse settlements. And today, now that California has lifted its statute of limitations, the Los Angeles Times, reported that the Archdiocese of Los Angeles is facing some $3 billion in abuse cases.
Good. Well, they might have to do what San Francisco and San Diego have done and declare bankruptcy, which is really just their effort to protect church assets. So, they declare bankruptcy, and
to protect their assets, but to prevent discovery.
Yes.
You see, that is what they cannot afford, because you see, if I go into your records, I'm going to find out all. You see, those priests who are being sued now and so forth for abuse and so forth. There are so many more names in your file.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get discovery, if I'm the DA and I get discovery, wow, it's going to be even worse than $3 billion.
Yeah. When I was Roman Catholic, when I initially became aware of Bishop Barron, I was kind of a fan. I watched his Catholicism series and I read the book. I thought they were good. And then he was made auxiliary in the Archdiocese. He was in the Santa Barbara province, which is the wealthiest and the most prestigious province there in LA. So I thought, well, that's a good sign. They put Gomez in there, and he was Opus Dei. So people were kind of like, maybe things are going to turn around in the Archdiocese, because it had a very bad reputation as being very heterodox. So I had gone to the Los Angeles Religious Education Congress. I don't know if you've ever gone, Gene. Have you ever gone to that?
No, I've heard of it. Yes, I don't think I really want to go there.
Yeah,
Some
you're
of the people they've invited to speak.
you're smart. So I did go, and I never really went for spiritual enrichment because I knew what it was like. I was mainly reporting on the pro LGBT because it was pretty notorious for all that stuff. So I thought, well, Bishop Barron is going to start being keynote speaker at the LA Rec. Maybe that'll change. I would assume he doesn't want to share the stage or the dais or whatever with these pro gay marriage, lesbian, trans nuns. I don't know. So, but he did. He did. So nothing really changed while he was there, except EWTN shows up, and it's kind of like puts a gloss on everything. They're kind of the shill. EWTN is there. Everything's changed. Everything's cool here. So here's Bishop Barron as one of the keynote speaker. They always gave him the big, huge auditoriums for his addresses, the largest, and they were, of course, were full, and they would sell out. And he would give a mediocre sort of address. I'm just going to give you some examples of Gene. I want you to get your reaction. So, of some of the LGBT stuff that went on there during Bishop Barron's tenure at the LA Rec as the keynote speaker. So, one of the attractions they had was an art exhibit by this William Hart McNichols. He's a self-outed gay priest who paints icons. Probably his most famous work is this, called Sodomite Christ. So
What?
he's also done this drawing here.
Yeah, you didn't know
And
this,
he also
man.
did an
California's
icon
a
of Matthew
mess.
Shepard, the young man who's become a sort of a gay saint. So this is the kind of stuff he does. One of the speakers at the LA Rec on the LGBT issue was from San Francisco.
Like, every single time, like, I even, like, hint at bringing this up, and, like, you get people, like, Irish in here, and they're just like, stop attacking the church! Or, like, Princess, why are you attacking the church? It's like, this is the reality. No one's attacking anything. You get it?
Yeah.
Why you always talk bad about the Pope?
And he's a member of Call to Action, which is a sort of notorious left, leaning Catholic organization, pro-gay marriage, pro-women ordination. Here he teaches at a Catholic school in the Archdiocese of San Francisco. I should say he used to. I think he got his PhD and he's moved on. So this was something he posted. Everyone is gay. A great big world. Happy National Coming Out Day. PSA, queer people are awesome. This is one of the presenters. And I asked Archbishop Corleone when I was still Catholic, I said, why did you, why was this guy allowed to speak? He's from your archdiocese. I kind of feel like you're a little bit responsible. He's also teaching in a Catholic
Now,
school. And he
what
said, well, I did
what gives me
notify the LA
somewhat
archdiocese.
hope is there has been no point in time that until like very recently now that we can like have random people go into like a Discord call and like talk about this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like I would even say like the 20th century, like the like the best conversation or the best argument against democracy is this conversation with the average voter. You know what I'm saying? So there is a kind of hope that like with the internet, like people would hopefully like learn about this stuff. You know what I'm saying? And you know, pray more. I don't like I'm trying to think of like something to do and there's really not much to do about this other than praying.
That I wasn't recommending him as a speaker, but they let him speak anyway. So this is something he said. We can teach church teachings and explain the context in which church teachings is being dialogued about. The goal of teaching and church teaching on morality, in my opinion, is to help the students form their own conscience. Some people are like, oh, That's creating cafeteria Catholics. They're going to come and pick and choose what teachings they want to follow. Great. That means they are following their consciences about each of the items in the cafeteria. This is the kind of stuff that they're promoting there. Do you recognize this priest? He's kind of well known, notorious. That's
No.
that's Father Brian Massengill.
Hmm.
He is a professor at Fordham, of course, and he's actually self come out too as a gay priest, and he has spoken several times at the LA Rec about the gay issue. Let me tell you this picture. It's kind of funny. So there's me, there's Brian Massengale, and there's a little religious sister. She was quite nice. So he had just finished his talk, and I was outside, and a couple of people, I guess, recognized me, and this religious sister came up to me, and she was quite upset about what was being said inside. And I was like, well, it's crazy. So I said, well, I'm going to talk to him, and you can say something as well, because she was nervous. So I addressed him, and I said, this what you're saying is ridiculous. And she said something, and he was very dismissive and very patronizing, very chauvinistic towards her. Here's what he said. One of the things: the defense of children is a constant phrase we hear in gender ideology, and a constant you'll hear in transgender discussions as well. We need to defend our children. The second thing they mean by gender ideology is that your gender is something you cannot choose. And the way they do it is by simplifying the gingerbread person we had up there. By using phrases such as let girls be girls and boys be boys. Now it sounds very simple, except what exactly does it mean to be a boy? And what does it mean to be a girl? It's a very catchy catchphrase, but it doesn't tell you very much. So one of the things that he was promoting was this genderbread graphic. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Well, there's the picture that I took in the auditorium where they were displaying it. And this is in front of DREs from around the country, CCD teachers, Catholic school teachers, priests, sisters. So they're promoting this for children.
Do you
And
see
the
this?
gingerbread person, here you go. There's the graphic.
So the-
Well,
So-
this is from Brian Massengale.
This is the LA Rec, right? It's the biggest religious convention they have for Catholics. They're inviting all the CCD teachers and all the catechists from around the freaking country, right? And they're
School
teaching
teachers,
them
priests, sisters. So they're
this, and then they bring out a genderbread person, right? And they're Look at. Do you see where the penis is, or where the? Do you see this? It's not just male and female. They got a trans symbol here. Do you see this on the left? On the top left of the penis?
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, gender expression, feminine, androgynous, masculine. Gender identity, woman, gender queer, man. And it's always, it's in the middle. You know what I mean? It's like biological sex, female, intersex, male, sexual, heterosexual, bisexual.
Here's the brutal truth. Everything in the middle is a material defect.
Pretty much, yep. It's not even
Yeah,
on the spectrum. It's off the spectrum.
Oh, yeah. Because it's like if you're androgynous, like material defect, like it's
What they're trying to iterate is that man and woman isn't a binary. It isn't a normative fact. That man and woman, male and female,
what
is on a spectrum. They're just saying, it's all a fucking spectrum. It's not a fucking spectrum.
what makes it a flippin' spectrum? Like
Precisely.
like the hormone balances, like no, like like I don't like why are we making this whole new thing just we so we protect the feelings of a person that has XXY chromosome, like a material defect. Like, I'm sorry, we live in a fallen world.
They're conflating like biological sex and gender identity. So like gender is a social construct, whereas biology isn't. But the way they're representing here is they're saying that, look, it says gender identity, right? There's no such thing as a gender identity. It's just man or woman. That's it. because man or woman correlates or corresponds to male and female, and that's biologically determined. Whereas gender expression and sexual orientation, those are social constructs to a certain degree, right? That you can be more masculine than feminine. That you could say it's on a spectrum, and sexual orientation can also quote unquote be on a, conventional spectrum. But what they're doing is they're saying that they're all the same in the same way because there's gay in the middle. They're
Yeah.
trying to
So
they're
like,
trying to normalize gay. That's what this genderbred person thing is.
yeah, intersex. That's obviously a material defect. Androgynous, or like that's based off like hormones and other factors.
No,
And
no, no.
then yeah,
Androgynous is a
yeah,
gender expression. That's a social
right,
construct.
yeah,
So it goes gender identity. This is not a social construct. Gender expression is a social construct. Biological
yeah.
sex is not a social construct. Sexual orientation is a social construct. But what they're doing is they're homogenizing all of them. They're conflating both sets of facts as all being the same fact.
Yeah.
This is clever obfuscation from the actual issue. But this is what they're teaching all the CCD teachers. This is what they're teaching all the nuns, all the priests.
Promoting this for children. And the
Uh,
genderbread person, here you go. There's the graphic. Well, this is from Brian Massaguel again. He said, "I think when a family member, oh, I can tell you, Father Gene, this was the question that was asked at this particular panel. Is it dangerous to allow very young children to transition?" And what they meant by transition was, go through gender transition. So Father Massengale said, "I think when a family member or a friend begins or is undergoing their transition, that we also undergo a journey of transition. That just as when a family member comes out as gay or lesbian, the whole family has to make a coming out journey. I think it's only dangerous to the child to not
dude,
recognize and respect their reality."
why be esoteric
You
about
you
this?
you had
You're
kids. Do
gonna
you have to
fucking
always respect and recognize kids' reality?
what the
Uh,
Stop using the word
you have to
journey,
understand,
okay?
Joseph.
Flip.
When I listen to people like this and read these kinds of presentations, I have a real problem with
It's
it
a
because,
homo-heresy.
from my experience, most of the cases I'm
Dude, I'm
involved
just
with,
tired of the word
although
journey.
I deal with cases involving women who were abused, but the vast majority of the people that I work with as a sex abuse victims advocate are seminarians and priests, and I find that that when it comes to their identity and what's going on, I find that almost every case there's some form of abuse involved that move them in that direction. And sometimes they don't know it's abuse because they were groomed. So you see, if you are 14 years old and you're in the seminary and I'm on the faculty and Joseph, how are you, buddy? Hey, do you know how to play tennis? And I teach you how to play tennis. Hey, what are you doing over? Do you want to go on a vacation? So I groom you. And then slowly, and then when you talk about, how sometimes priests, like in the seminary, ask, well, do you ever masturbate or do something like that? Well, again, slowly, I introduce you, you know, to things that your parents really would not be very happy, to learn about that their son is doing with the priest.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't realize what's going on because you've never dated girls, you've never had these other experiences. So when this is happening, you do not see this as abuse, even though I'm grooming you, even though I'm using you for my own sexual pleasure. No,
No.
you see me as your best
So
friend in the
Yep.
whole
what?
world.
Hold
Yep.
on, we're
So,
patching to the
so
stream.
when it comes now, so when later on, when
The
somebody
Bismuth
confronts you and says,
pauses.
"Well, what are you? Are you straight or gay?" Well, so I'm
He said almost all in like abusive cases. So like I know we like say they're like hormonal, or like the pregnancy messed, like the mother like did something like drink alcohol, or like you know took drugs. Um but he's kind of implying, he said almost all, like that's like 90% of like the people that are gay, that's the result of abuse. like grooming, right, Abysmal? Abysmal, are you there?
Shit, I was muted. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, it's one of those things that's hard to get like actual real data, right? Unless people are being honest and transparent about this stuff, which they won't, because people know what the implications of answering a questionnaire in a particular way, especially about this kind of sensitive issue. But papers have been written on what do they call it? They call it spiteful mutation. That was the paper that was written. Um, Basically, if you're a homosexual person, you can't copulate in a normal way, right? So you're going to want, in order for you to produce children, instead, what gay people do is they groom. That's why the twink culture and ephebophilia is a real thing. The twink culture, right? They can't reproduce sexually, so they try to reproduce by causing sexual trauma and by basically molesting people. Because they're turning people gay. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
I
The
have a
like,
homosexual.
dude, it like you know those like I've listened to like leftist political streamer, and they like say like you can't choose your own like sexual orientation. You get what I'm saying?
It's all the
But it's like,
gaslight.
yeah, it's a guy's like we're all like born straight, but like it's like nature, it's fucking other human beings that turn like straight people into gay most of the time. Like 90% of the time, it seems
Yeah, I
like
mean,
it's
if
like
if there is a quote unquote that's the thing. It's a material evil in the sense that could there be cases where someone is wired like they're born as a male but they're wired differently or affected by hormones in a particular
that
way
is
because of the
possible.
gestation period? Of course, because genetic expression, genetic diversity is pretty messy, right? Like evolutionarily. So like, but that is such a small percentage, right? But when you actually look at statistics and you have like a rise from now like 20% of like Gen Z is identifying as gay, like that's not right. You know what I mean? There's something wrong with that. That's
Yeah.
not a correct. That doesn't
So there's
correlate with the scientific data that we actually have when it comes to
so there's
being born gay. You see what I mean? Clearly, there's something else going on here.
right. Like there's clearly I think there's five possibilities, and the weakest case is like like a gene that does that. You get what I'm saying? I think that's the weakest because we never found one. Then the pregnancy, something happening during pregnancy, hormonal, uh, flipping society like groomers and like the internet, and then straight up demons. Those are the five different possibilities. You know what I'm saying?
Orientation.
And the
Well, then
grooming
they
is
want
the
to say,
most
"Oh, you
common,
must have."
Yeah.
either physically or through
Yeah,
the
the
internet.
point of this is to say that there is a grooming culture that has always been there in the Catholic hierarchy.
Yeah.
Been born that way. Hold it. You don't want to talk about, what happened to you in the seminary. And I certainly don't want you to talk about what I did to you in the seminary
Of course.
because I do not want people to know how I groomed you. And I want you to think for the rest of your life till you die that I'm your best friend.
Exactly. The majority of gay men experience same-sex molestation as children. That number is about 7% for straight men. Huge difference. It gets worse. They also had the mother of FTM, transgender. That would be female to male, transgender person, young minor who was in a Catholic school, and she was there to say how affirming and how wonderful the Catholic school was for her daughter who had transitioned to being a male. This woman said, this is the mother of the transgender child, there is absolutely nothing wrong or harmful with letting a child tell you who they are. You need to believe them. I think we do more harm, even with even with very little children, maybe even especially with very little children, when we send them the message that we can't love them for who they are. Now, it's easier to do that with a girl who doesn't want to wear dresses than with a boy who does want to wear dresses, but you can still do it. you can let a child tell you who they are. They also had, at that presentation, they had a female to male transgender person who I assume had had a double mastectomy. And this person was, saying how wonderful it was that they had transitioned and how welcomed and how affirmed they are at their Catholic parish. This is
make a point about
go
that.
ahead.
You mentioned the woman, the girl with the double mastectomy.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with the case where that happened, but what the parents and the family and no one revealed about that particular girl?
No.
Before that happened, when she was younger, she was sexually abused.
Yes.
Now they keep that quiet.
Of course.
Because they don't want to know, what impacted her. Because you see, if I'm a little girl and I'm raped by my father, let's say, okay, or my stepfather, right? That is going to affect me big time. Now, in the past, that might move some of these girls who experience that maybe later on to become lesbians.
Yeah.
But now you have this whole, they can even go farther than that. I mean, the effects of that abuse may not only move them to be a lesbian, just like a boy who is molested might move him to become a homosexual.
Yeah.
It's now moving them to want to go through this gender transition,
Yeah.
thinking that is going to solve their problems without realizing, it only compounds the problem.
Yeah.
So don't be surprised. I know in this particular case, I hope I'm wrong, because I've seen this. This young woman I'm talking about, I knew her when she was in preschool. I knew her as a little girl. And so knowing, how innocent and lovely this little girl was and where she is today, I'm really honestly fearful that within so many years or whatever, she may take her life. If she takes her life, it's not going to be because people were not affirming her. It's because
she was abused.
Yes, exactly. But you see, we want to make an excuse. Well, she was born that way. This is genetic. Nobody wants to talk about what really is happening, the grooming and the abuse that is going on.
No, I agree. There's a bit of a conspiracy with the psychiatric field, I think, with pedophiles.
I'll be right
is
back.
because I went through this even in the 80s.
I'll be gone for like 2 minutes, okay? All right, conspiracy in the psychiatric community.
You back?
Yep.
Okay.
Is it when a child is having, noticeable mental health problems, if a psychiatrist, delves a little deeper and finds out maybe that the boy or girl has same-sex attraction, well, they will automatically ascribe those mental health issues to some sort of minority stress that, your family's not accepting, or your peers are not accepting, or that your religion is not accepting. But like when I was a kid, they never asked me if I had been sexually abused, and I had been sexually abused by a priest. And then, but you're right, they ascribe all these things to some other cause, but they don't want to go there, because if they go there, then the whole house of cards falls. You're not born gay. It's primarily trauma based. So, but this is the kind of stuff they're pushing, under Bishop Barron's auspices. This was a priest who also addressed the LA Rec on the LGBT issue. He's a priest of the Archdiocese of San Francisco. His name is Chris Ponnet. And he does, these Pride LGBT June masses, there in the Archdiocese. And this is what he said. It actually, this was the impetus for me, because I had already spoken to Archbishop Gomez and they play dumb. I'd spoken to him personally at the LA Rec, and he played completely dumb. He had no idea. The Church of Satan could have been presenting at the LA Rec, and he wouldn't have known it. He just didn't know anything. That's what he said. So when I went to this presentation by this priest, I had to get up and I had to start writing letters. And this is what the priest said. Part of our question as we walk this journey is, do we understand what this is about, sexual identity? The way in which a person sees themselves and in terms of who they are, romantically and sexually attracted to. Now, some people don't even have that when they are 50 years old. We know that some people, as second and third graders, have that, and they begin to identify with either what is normative or, from their perspective, what is normative. And they dress different from what you expect. They speak differently, and they identify themselves in a world that is unto themselves. And we are called to journey with them and affirm them in that journey. When I heard that, and he got more detailed later, when I heard that, this is a blueprint for abusing a child. You're recognizing a certain child as being different. You're identifying them, you're befriending them, and you're affirming them. And I said, this is what, in the Archdiocese of LA, this is what they're publicly stating. They're teaching people how to groom and abuse a child. And I said, this.
Do you get this?
Yeah.
So now that the groomers are all in charge now, that's what they're teaching people to catechize people. That's why they renamed RCIA to Orientation of Catholic Initiation. You get it? Like, this isn't some fucking conspiracy theory. This is literally what's happening right now.
There was the third speaker straight up was like sodomy will enter the Vatican, like straight up, like all will sodomy be in all like in every like archdiocese?
They're gonna bring this back full circle, but they're gonna eventually start talking about Bishop Barron again, and that's the thing.
This is so sad because
Yeah,
it's like
now Bishop Barron is still in
yeah,
LA, where this is happening. You get what I mean?
yeah.
So that tells you kind of like, because we have the public persona and the public image of Bishop Barron, but this is literally happening under his nose, and he's not doing anything to stop it. It's not just an internal matter anymore. They brought it out into the external form, and they're trying to normalize it. But this is literally what he just went through. This is what grooming is. This is grooming behavior right here.
Right.
This is sick.
But you see, Joseph, it's these priests who themselves are being part of that community, are looking for some type of self-affirmation to say this is normal, this is fine, because they're frustrated, especially they know most of them are living in the closet, and they know what the official teachings of the church are in regard to homosexuality and homosexual behavior. And they know that while the church does not condemn a person because of one's orientation, I mean, if I'm straight and or gay, okay. But now if I'm straight and I come and visit you and you're married and I try hitting on your wife while you go out to get the milk, then you have a problem with my orientation. It's just not my orientation. Yeah. Or if you're gay and I leave and you try to hit on my son, then there's a problem. So the church has always made it clear, has always made that distinction between orientation and behavior. Mm-hmm. But it has never viewed the behavior as moral and as normal.
Mm-mm. And of course, James Martin was there speaking about the LGBT issue. This was something, he was invited to the World Meeting of Families in
Do you see this photo right here?
Yeah, I was looking. I'm trying to like, what the flip is?
That's a child's hand, and that's a man. What is going on, dude? Like, Father James Martin, boom. James Allison, boom. Bishop Peter Doyle, boom. Dr. Claren Watkins, boom. Catholic theologian who teaches at the University of Roehampton. Clare is committed to teaching and research in the areas of ecclesiology, sacramental theology, and practical theology. do you see now how like entrenched this is in the mainstream Catholicism at this point?
Yeah,
This is
that's a scary photo.
Friday the 10th, Sunday the 12th, August. Bishop Grossetti University.
I believe it was in Ireland, Dublin, I think, in 2018. And this was
Look
an
at the kids'
advertisement
blocks.
for
Like, what the fuck?
an event that he spoke at. James Allison is a pretty notorious gay Catholic priest, self-outed. So I'm not saying anything that these people don't. What was troubling to me was this graphic of a child's hand and this adult hand with the LGBT flag here and this Vatican flag here. It's really disturbing. So I think what I was trying to demonstrate here with the stuff at the LA Rec is that I think they're actively and openly grooming children, or at least promoting it. And I guess Bishop Barron doesn't have a problem with it. So
I could not agree with you more. I mean, I believe that so uh, many problems that young people have today, involve grooming.
yep.
When my, years ago, if parents had children, they went off to high school.
Yep.
In the past, parents were worried if you had a son that he might get a girl pregnant, or if you had a daughter that your daughter would get pregnant in high school. But today, you have to really worry about your son or your daughter being groomed,
Okay.
and without realizing that he or she is being used, and abused.
Yep. One of the things that was disturbing to me is that at one of the LA Recs, they have a large, I don't know what you call it, the convention area where it's mainly, different religious orders set up booths and Catholic retailers, and it's a huge, huge space. They had the LGBT ministry of the LA Archdiocese, where they had the gay flags and everything, right next to the Boy Scouts of America booth. It was I was like, okay, what else? It's pretty obvious what they're trying to do here.
I'm not surprised that with that
What?
connection, when I
Right
Did you
next to
catch
the Boy
that?
Scouts of America booth.
Yeah, I
It was
did.
it was
Yeah.
I was like, okay,
I was looking at
what
that
else?
photo. I'm
It's
like,
pretty obvious what they're trying to do here.
Archdiocese of
Catholic.
Los Angeles Catholic Ministry with lesbian gay persons. Scouting is youth ministry, dude. What is this?
Oh my goodness.
I'm not surprised that with that connection, when I was working in Washington, I befriended Dr. Judith Reisman.
Oh
Are
yeah.
you familiar with her?
Yes, she was great. God rest her soul.
Well, I mean, I asked her. I said, "Look, I'm working on this. I'm tasked with examining the Department of Defense homosexual exclusion policy, and I understand like you are a real expert when it comes to these matters." I said, I can't afford to pay any consulting fees, but I said I like to cook, and I can actually make a pretty good deal. How about if I came over to your home and made you dinner, and then maybe you could share some of your research with me? She says, no one has ever asked me that before, like to do with that. Great, come on over. So I went over. It was an incredible encounter with her. But I can still remember when she warned the Boy Scouts, when she said, look, aren't you guys familiar with this institution called the Catholic Church? Aren't you familiar with all the lawsuits that they have been facing when they started, accepting homosexuals into the priesthood? Don't you know that there's a direct correlation between, the number of homosexual priests and the amount of abuse in the Catholic Church? She said, why, knowing that, would you want to put yourself in a similar position with the Boy Scouts? You're going to find yourself, in a lot of, hot water in the future. Well, of course, they didn't listen to her. And what do you have? Over 100,000 lawsuits against the Boy Scouts who filed for bankruptcy.
I know this is anecdotal evidence, but I know some survivors who were abused in the Boy Scouts when they were boys, and there's a correlation here that a lot of
Dude,
times these
you know
troops
what we need to do?
that had
That's
abuse were
actually kind of
attached in some way
interesting.
to either
Okay,
a Catholic
Abismo.
parish or a Catholic school.
here's we yeah, so like we had someone say like the amount of gay people and the amount of abuse rates are direct correlation. We we could get is there a way to get like just screen that off to the rooftops? Let's just tell everyone continuously. I mean, but like we tell people this and it's like they won't call it gay people. They will just call it pedophiles. You know what I'm saying? They try to separate homosexuality from pedophilia. You know what I'm saying, Abismo?
Yeah, you've been in here
Yeah.
when we've conversed with those people.
Yeah. It's people try to explain like, oh, what if priests just have more access to boys than girls? So that's why they're gay. Is because
And
the
then you show
access
them the
isn't there.
data from the John Jay report where it literally
Yeah.
shows it's just
Yeah.
disproportionately gay twink pedophilia.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
School, because I was never in the Boy Scouts, I was in the Cub Scouts, but I remember at my Catholic school, the troops sometimes were attached to a school, so or a parish, so that was a problem. This is from Bishop Barron's 2017 book, To Light
They're pretty
a
much
Fire
always
on the Earth,
attached to like a
Proclaiming the
church.
Gospel in a Secular Age. And here he's talking about how Pope Francis has shifted the focus on a lot of social issues. Here, what does he say? From the sexual issues to things like immigration, the poor, the environment, and how Bishop Barron agrees with that shift in emphasis. To me, it's kind of like, well, they don't want to address, and you talk about this in your article about what Bishop Barron had to say about sex abuse, and I think they don't want to address their own problems. So here's Bishop Barron. I always thought that was an odd picture. I thought I'd show it. And this Bishop Barron has really made inroads into what used to be called the IDW, the intellectual dark web. I don't know what it's called now. It's kind of a loose affiliation of like red pilled, based people like Jordan Peterson and who's the
Okay, like Manosphere
the
kind of
Daily
thing.
Wire people and uh,
What's that?
Like somewhat like a Manosphere kind of thing.
I don't understand.
Like Manosphere, like pickup artists, Red Pill, the MGTOW kind of groups. You know what I'm saying?
who
So that
else?
was the,
Lex Friedman.
but
So
like
he's
also like
made his
right.
way into these podcasts that are mainly appealing to young
I'm not mad.
men,
It's
which I
closed
think is
group,
kind
but
of
separate.
planned that way. And I don't know what to say about that. So I don't think it's a good idea. So I want to talk to you. I know
On that point, right?
Wait,
Are you
oh my goodness,
aware of
dude.
are you aware of the fact that Bishop Barron, right? Like he hired like some bodybuilder dude to like be part of like his Word on Fire team, and like he tried to give him more screen time and get him on camera and do all this stuff about like working out and like doing all like the workout bro stuff. And then he had to fire him, right? Did you hear about this scandal?
No, I didn't hear.
So what happened is he hired this like gym bro basically to become part of Word of Fire, and then it came out that that gym bro was a gay male prostitute. So then he had to fire him. This is Bishop Barron.
Oh my,
You didn't know this?
yikes! My goodness.
kept you for a while, Gene, but
Oh
I want to talk to
man.
you about this article that you wrote in 2019, and it's called A Response to Bishop Robert Barron's Letter to a Suffering Church. So I addressed this letter with the Shakas in the previous podcast, but I wanted to reiterate a couple of points, and you talk about one of these points in the article as well, your article. This was something from Bishop Barron's essay, book, whatever, I don't know what he was hawking it on his website. So Bishop Barron said this about the abuse crisis and what Catholics could do, presumably survivors as well. He wrote, "Fight by raising your voice in protest, fight by writing a letter of complaint, Fight by insisting that protocols be followed. Fight by refusing to be mollified by pathetic excuses. Well, you know, I did all of those things, wrote letters, did everything, followed all the protocol, never got an answer except I got, you know, dragged and blocked by him on social media. And Bishop Barron has a very aggressive, very defensive team around him. And before I had even contacted them, they had threatened me through social media that I need to stop, I guess, talking about Bishop Barron in a less than favorable way. So he's a hypocrite. So,
well, again, the problem with his admonitions in that little book, as you know, you've tried all those things, all those approaches, and the analogy I always use is you're wasting your time. It's like when people try to appeal to canon law or right to the Vatican. Well, it's like if you lived in Germany and the Gestapo were to take your parents off and take them off to a concentration camp, and you said, well, I'm going to resolve this. I'm going to appeal, and you write to Adolf Hitler or Heinrich Himmler, and I would say, are you nuts, Joseph? Joseph, you know, you're writing to the very person, you know, who's behind all this. So when people appeal to the Vatican, you're appealing basically to people who are no better, but in many cases worse than the person you are reporting in your own local area. Exactly. Remember who said it never happened in my diocese? If the Pope, when he was the Archbishop of Buenos Aires,
not one case,
7 million Catholics, not one abuse case. Hello.
Well, you set up my next point perfectly. Thank you, Gene. Why people put faith, even survivors, why they put faith in the institution is because of what Bishop Barron said in that letter that really offended me. And he said this: there is simply never a good reason to leave the church. Never. Good reason to criticize church people, you bet. But grounds for turning away from the grace of Christ in which eternal life is found. No, never, under any circumstances. So I was offended by this because I did give it a shot in the Catholic Church. I mean, I tried. You know, I tried to be an advocate for survivors and victims, and you just get mowed over again. But you can't leave. You can't leave. We can beat you, hit you, spit on you, and you got to ask for more. That's being a good Catholic. And I was like, no, because most survivors has said, if I stay in the Catholic Church, I'm going to lose my faith. Not just my faith in this institution, but my faith in God. I got to get out. I don't know any survivors that have stayed.
Well, I know very, 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 very few. And also whistleblowers like myself. You know, in other words, I had a hard time. If I have to pray, let's say, let us pray for Francis, our Pope, and Robert McElroy, our Bishop. Well, hold it. I know how much abuse they covered up. I know that Robert McElroy covered up the rape of Rachel Mastrogiacomo. I know that when Richard Sipe presented McElroy and the Pope, he didn't give it to McElroy because Richard Sipe knew that only the Pope could discipline the McCarrick, not McElroy. So when he had McElroy legally served, the evidence showing that McCarrick sexually abused 12 seminarians and young priests. That what happened? Nothing. You know, it was all. When you talk about appealing, so how do you think Richard Sipe felt? How do you think these parents feel whose sons are tossed out because they report abuse? You know, today they want nothing. One woman who was a lay Dominican, whose son, who was the one I spoke of, who was abused, you know, in Washington and Baltimore. She was a devout lay Dominican. You know, they prayed the rosary as a family together. You know, but I got to tell you, you know, I don't want to scandalize your listeners out there, but many of these devout families in the past, whenever they were in their car, they were driving past the church, they would make the sign of the cross. And you know what they do now when they go past the church?
Yeah, I can imagine.
They're not making the sign of the cross. They're using their hand, but not the sign of the cross.
Well, the thing is that I've heard this from a lot of survivors, is that those in the church will use the victim's faith against them, saying things like, you know, you can't leave Jesus because of Judas. You know, if you attack the church, you're attacking the body of Christ. You know, they use all this stuff. If you leave the Catholic Church, you're going to hell. You're not saved. They use all this stuff, so it shuts people up. And what I even did too is that, you know, I got so messed up in my own head, is that I was covering up my own abuse, because I felt like if I talk about it, it's going to hurt the church, or it's going to hurt the traditional movement, which I believe in. So I'm not going to say anything. And a lot of priests do that as well. I've heard from priests, and I don't think they're evil people, but they'll say, well, Joe, I know A, B, and C, but if I reveal these things, I'm going to be kicked out of the church. So they're like, well, they're kind of like weighing it. I'm doing a lot of good in the church, so I'm going to stay quiet in order to keep doing those things that I want to do and that I feel that God has commanded me to do. So I'm going to stay quiet.
The problem, Joseph, is too that priests are poor. I mean, for the most part, you know, remember when I told you Mahoney came to speak to the priest in Ventura? It was on that occasion that they changed the retirement plan. And he said, we've decided that when you retire, you cannot make more money than you are currently making as a priest. Well, the problem is that, you see, when you retire and you're no longer living in the rectory, you no longer have room and board. Mm-hmm. And what are the major expenses that we have in life? A home and food. Yep. And so, you see, if you keep the priest poor, yep, you can control them. And so a lot of these priests who are good priests, yeah, who are not part of the problem, we're not abusing people, they know, and they see what happens to people like Strickland, you know, yep, and Kolchak and White, yes, and exactly, Brady, and they see, look, I don't want to be living in the street. Yeah. No. And they will be living in the street. They will be living in the street. And what do you do with a theology degree or a philosophy degree? You know,
you're not going to teach
it. You're going to be poor, and you can't. You're going to be thrown out. Now, Father Tom Doyle and myself,
a street beggar, but instead be alive. Did you hear about the abuse?
The
abuse story?
We have
Did you hear? Just going around the city, just holding up a sign, being like, "This bishop is evil."
But these priests, diocesan priests, and so forth, who work in those parishes, they have no net. When they're thrown out, they don't have retirement, they don't have health benefits, and they're going to be hurting really.
Yep. You wrote this in that article about Bishop Barron. He writes that the reporting of new cases is down to a trickle. That you quoted him. The fact is, however, that reporting doubled between July 1st, 2017 and June 30th, 2018. Even though he laments the abuse and cover-ups, he fails to address the fact that it is the Catholic Church and not simply predator priests and corrupt bishops that is responsible for the abuse problem. Why should one want to blame the problem on the Catholic Church? ? It's also interesting that about only 16% of male sex abuse survivors ever report. So it's not a lot. And they tend to do so. This is kind of surprising, but it was that way in my life. They tend to report much later.
Decades later, absolutely.
Yes. So, I mean, the people that were abused, let's say in the 90s and the O's, the 90s, they might just start reporting now.
Well, exactly. Now, are you familiar with Father Paul Sullins?
No, I'm not.
Father Paul Sullins is a married former Episcopal priest, okay? He lives near Catholic University where he worked as a sociologist, okay? And in 2018, in November, that was the meeting of the USCCB when the bishops were going to vote on having some, controls put in place that will discipline bishops who are abusive. And remember, it was at that meeting that Supich said, well, the Holy Father doesn't want us to address this at this meeting because he's going to hold a summit in the Vatican in February. So let's put off this vote. Well, at that same meeting, Father Paul Sullins presented the bishops with his very, very, very detailed sex abuse report, which showed a direct correlation between the increase in the number of homosexuals in the priesthood to the increase in the number of abuse victims. Now, years later, we were talking, and he was under the impression that, look, the number of homosexual priests in the priesthood are going down. And I said, Paul, why do you think that? He says, well, look, the number of abuse cases are going down. I said, Paul, how can you say that? I said, Paul, he said, look at the chart. And he showed me the USCCB bishops chart. well, the bishop showed, a decrease after 1980. Well, the problem is that, as you say, it takes decades, 10, 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50 years ordinarily before the abuse is reported. So I said, Paul, the bishops can't say that abuse is going down because it won't be noted until another 30 or 40 years. And then, but guess what? He says, you know what? I think you're right. So if you go on his website today and you look at the chart, you'll see he doesn't project it out like the bishops did. He recognizes that we cannot say, in fact, that abuse is going down.
But that is the pat answer, that because Barron, the interesting thing about Bishop Barron is that I think he's very selective about what interviews he does. I mean, he won't talk to a pre-sex abuse survivor like me. I'm sure he won't talk to you. And I've talked to some other more, objective, Catholic podcasters. He won't talk to them. He's pretty selective about who he talks to. And most of the time, 9 out of 10 times, they don't ask him about the pre-sex abuse issue. Now, one time they did with Lex Friedman, and he does give that pat answer, which you addressed here, is that it's been taken care of. Safeguards have been put in place since the Dallas Charter. The abuse is going down, and it's been addressed, and it's over. Like Gregory, I always quote, I always, whenever I see anything on Gregory on social media, I put his famous quote, "The scandalous history," and that was from 2004. He said, "The scandalous history, it's over. We're done addressing it." So that's what they say. This is another quote from your article. "The even greater elephant in the room that neither the media nor the U.S. bishops, including Bishop Barron, want to expose is the amount of abuse that Pope Francis himself covered up in Buenos Aires prior to his papal election. How can the Pope discipline bishops for covering up?"
When the other guys come back or in here, that's the next thing that we're going to watch. We're going to watch Code of Silence, documentary on Pope Francis.
Or underreporting sex abuse when most bishops know he himself covered up innumerable abuse cases in his archdiocese with a population of 2.5 million Catholics.
Well, and again, that's why when he could not discipline McCarrick. He let McCarrick roam around the world to China and all over. Why? Because he knew that McCarrick knew that he was also alleged to have been involved with novices and seminarians sexually in Argentina, especially in Cordoba. So how can if I'm your bishop, and let's say you're a priest, let's say you are have a girlfriend, okay, and you're carrying on an affair with her, and everybody knows it. You go out, restaurants are seen together, but if you have some dirt on me, if you know that I'm sleeping with this guy or this woman, how can I discipline you when you have the goods on me? So it's an issue of blackmail. So the problem with the Pope, there are how many bishops? Are you ready for your quiz? How many bishops, according to bishopcountability.org, have been credibly accused in the world of abusing either minors or vulnerable adults? 150. How many, Joseph, have been laicized to date? 7.
Okay.
7.
Holy shit, I didn't even know the number was that big. 150 bishops credibly accused. And only 7 have been laicized. That's insane. I actually didn't know the number was that big, 150.
Then what? Which is like 5,000 around the world.
I don't know what the overall number is, but dude, those probably a vast majority of them were made bishops under Pope John Paul II and or Pope Benedict. That's insane.
Wow. Oh, I'm surprised. Okay.
7. And McCarrick is the 7th one. But you see, some people think, oh, well, at least McCarrick was laicized. No. What most people don't realize is that only the Pope can conduct a trial for a cardinal, can stand in judgment of a cardinal. You see, but the problem is this. Bergoglio, Pope Francis, could not convene that trial because he knew that McCarrick knew about him. And so that's why it was much easier to get rid of him, to laicize him, and then to have a sham of a trial.
Exactly. This is your last quote here. As long as there are so many corrupt prelates in the highest positions of the Catholic hierarchy, can Bishop Barron really expect matters to improve, no matter how hard Catholics fight? Like he was saying, fight, fight, fight. And I was pretty naive when I was in the Catholic Church, and I really thought that maybe one person could make a difference, or even maybe a group of people, like survivors, if they organize. And I think they can in a small way, but it's not through church channels. The way that victims and survivors have made a difference is through the secular courts. That's how they've been able to do it. If you try to work within the hierarchy, as Bishop Barron said, fight, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to get anywhere. I mean, as an example of this, it's like priests won't say anything. Bishops won't, well, except for Bishop Strickland, but look what happened to him. So, like I interviewed a priest on my podcast, a good priest, and I would say a courageous priest. Afterwards, he was kind of like, you know what, Joe, this section of the interview you need to redact. I go, oh, fine, I don't care. But I was kind of like, well, why? Because that was me speaking. He actually didn't respond. And I was saying something about James Martin. And the priest said, just me being here and listening to that will cause me a lot of problems with my bishop.
And look at all the priests who are in that position today. People, again, like Mark White, whom you interviewed.
Yeah.
And here, and isn't it interesting, Joseph? Mark White was the pastor of two rural Virginia parishes where half the members of the congregation were poor Hispanics.
Yep.
I mean, you talk about someone doing the Lord's work and working and bilingual, taking care of these people, loving them, but then very disturbed by what he saw going on in the church, and knowing too what he knew about McCarrick, Worrell, and the Pope. And when you know these allegations, which are not being reported oftentimes either by the secular media or news services like Catholic News Agency or Catholic News Service, people don't know this. So when Mark White on his blog, broadcasts the truth, he's a threat and he has to be removed. He has to be silenced. You talk about how the Germans or the Soviets silenced dissidents. Well, this is what's happening today. And just ask someone like Joseph Strickland.
Yeah. When on social media at last, I interviewed Bishop Strickland, a good man. Mainly a lot of traditional Catholics were cheering Bishop Strickland on, especially on Twitter, because Bishop Strickland was pretty active on Twitter. That's what got him in trouble, I think. And I was like saying, this is not going to end well for Bishop Strickland. I could see it years ago because I said, I know priests who have spoken out and who have a much smaller platform, and the iron boot comes down on their neck. And I go, this is not going to end well for Bishop Strickland. And it didn't, because I don't know, I'm trying to be charitable. Well, this is what Bishop Barron said about James Martin, and James Martin is evil. He said, Father Martin is a winsome guide to all those who want to deepen their friendship with the Lord. So Bishop Barron says what he needs to say to get ahead and to survive in the church. He's not going to say the truth about anything.
No, well, I actually, that's why when I wrote that article, it reminded me of McCarrick in 2002 when he was saying, well, the church has to do something about these homosexuals. We should not ordain them. We should not allow them. This is McCarrick. Or the same thing in 2005 when Archbishop Edwin O'Brien, who was tasked by the Vatican to do a study of seminaries in the United States, said, we should not be ordaining and accepting homosexuals. Well, remember, Rod Dreher wrote that article afterwards, quoting those two young men, two homosexuals from the Courage Conference, who when they read what O'Brien was quoted as saying in the Catholic Register, said, hold it, this is the same guy who knew we were homosexuals, who tried to recruit us to become priests of New York and become military chaplains. One hand, he says we shouldn't take them. Next thing, he's doing it. So Barron, McCarrick, O'Brien, even the Pope, it's all doublespeak.
Well,
they're playing for their listeners. They want to say the right things. They will they want to they don't want to offend people, and they want to come off as they still want to hide who they really are.
well, even if the bishops don't want to accept people who are openly homosexual into the seminaries, they've got a big problem right now, because what heterosexual guy would want to be a Catholic priest right now? And I think Bishop Barron, if you look at some of his online persona, he's trying to project this image of masculinity, I think, sometimes by surrounding himself with bodybuilders. But I think it's
That backfires.
it's backfired, and it just looks bad, and it looks desperate, and it looks not cool. So I mean, the Catholic Church they have a big problem. They're not going to attract what I think what you and I would describe as good candidates for the priesthood, because I don't know what's attractive there. And there was a seminarian, and I'm gonna let you go because I've kept you too long. What worries me as well is there was a seminarian that used to um, email me, and because I had been real outspoken, and I had talked to you about the problem in the Catholic seminaries, and he was writing to me about the issues that he had in his seminary, which were homosexual, and the gaslighting and the lying and the persecution that he was enduring. And he was wanting to leave, and he was describing how he was so committed to being a priest and wanting to be a priest. It was something that he had thought about since he was a kid. It's all he ever wanted, and he believed that he was doing God's will. And because I was like, I think you need to leave, because he sounded mentally unstable to me, this young seminary. I said, you need to leave. I said, you have people to go with. Can you go to your parents? Can you go to your friends? But he was so committed to this goal of being a priest that he would not leave. And then I hope he's well. Then he stopped corresponding with me, because I just said, you need to leave. But it worries me even about the people that are attracted to the priesthood at this point, and the people that go through the seminary process, that there's so much gaslighting, and there's so much brainwashing, and there's so much uh just abuse. I worry about the people that go through that, because I don't think they're going to be well on the other end. And I've seen priests that came out of seminaries who were conservative and were sort of able to get through it, and they came out damaged. They really did. They weren't well. And I think, and I saw it in their relationships with their bishops, which was abusive. And I was like, this is not good for two men to be treating each other this way. And some of them, it eventually drove them nuts. So
Well, as I told you
Did you hear
earlier,
this?
most of
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, like, and I've not only experienced, but I've known seminaries like the ones that he's talking about, where they get in and they literally get harassed and stuff. Like, it's some crazy shit where it's to the point where I'm thinking, like, are you fucking crazy? Like, it'll be my friend, right? And like he'll like call me in the middle of the night and be like, Nick, like, they're like literally outside my door and they're like banging on it and shit. Like in the middle of the night, and I can't go to sleep. It's fucking driving me insane. And I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, either my friend is being psychotic, you get what I'm saying? Or
Dude,
like,
what's crazy? Like so, so
but
if
yeah,
if I've heard where like priests would like in a monastery or like a seminarian, like people like discerning the whatever in a seminarian, and if one like jacks off, right, then like they will I've heard from like I forget what video this was. One of those like the videos where like exorcists talk, but I forget if this was an exorcist talking. But like a demon would go through that monastery from just one mortal sin. Get what I'm saying? But if it's like, but that's just masturbation, right? Parent like what would have like the entire monastery destroyed. You know what I'm saying? This is sodomy. This is grooming. Like, imagine how much worse, how much more demons are, like, in that monastery. But so, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
But, like, your friend calls you up and it's like, people are banging at the door at midnight?
yeah, like literally. And like, it wasn't just the one time, right? And then he'd like call me the week later, and it's like the same thing. He's like, yo, Like I'm not lying to you. Like they're literally trying to drive me insane or something. And I was like, dude, have you, talk to your, you know, director there. You know, your, because like each seminary level will have their own like presets like assigned and stuff. And he'll be like, I can't trust him. You know what I mean? So like he literally sounds like like he's paranoid, being paranoid, right? But
Dude, this
like
sounds like
these are my
worse than the
friends that I know.
military.
Yeah, dude.
So it sounds
So like,
psychologically worse than the military because you like if you're a Catholic, if you're a devout Catholic, you go to the military, you flip and be like, all right, the church is higher than the state, whatever, or if
and,
it's like another matter, it's like it's designed to psychologically beat you down, so psychologically you're like, oh, okay, this is the military, this is the boot camp, like who
yeah,
cares? They're trying to
these are people like my friend, college
yeah,
graduate, like he worked, in corporate life, and then he went into the seminary. You know what I mean? So it's like he's a fucking fully grown adult, and
right,
they're putting themselves in a formation system, right, where they're trying to be obedient and they're trying to, you know what I mean, and they're trying to be humble and docile and stuff. And then I'm at the end of the day, I'm gonna trust my friend. You get what I mean?
yeah.
So like, I would tell him like, yeah, like, yo, I can like stop by like maybe in like the next 3 weeks. You see what I mean, or next month. You know what I mean? And I'd go and visit him on the weekend and stuff. You know what I mean? Get the visitors tag and everything, and they're like, and then I get to have lunch with them while he's going to class, and I'm just like hanging out at the seminar. You know what I mean? And I'm just like,
Right.
when you go there, yeah, I mean, they're doing their own thing. I want to say there's you can definitely notice like the creepy priests that are there. You know what I mean? And he was at a monastic seminary too. So the monastic seminary is a little bit different because it's a seminary that's part of like the monastery. So the monks are doing their own thing, and some of the monks are instructors for their class. But it's a pastoral formation, so they have priests from the diocese and outside of the diocese that are there as like formators. You see what I mean? So and it's run like a university or a grad program. You get what I mean? And you can
Yeah.
notice that some of the priests, not necessarily the monks, but the priests that are supposed to be the formators, they're some weirdos, dude. Like and like you
But
notice like this guy's really fucking effeminate. You know what I mean?
but you haven't like the
But like
monks. You haven't seen this like infiltration in the monastery, like in the monks, have you?
that I don't know because like I don't- you know I the only the again I was there as a visitor. I would come and
Right.
visit my friend, and the monks like they have their own thing. You know what I mean? And because it's a Benedictine monastery, so they're under their own schedule. They have their own like um they have their own assignments,
It,
and they're doing their monk thing. You know what I mean? So I didn't get a chance to meet
right.
all the monks. I only saw like the priests that were in habits that were apparently part of the formation team. So like you know I
Dude,
you know what I mean?
this
I
is
like I don't know the rest of the monks. So but of the priest
I
formators that were there, like it was just like he would point out, yeah, that's Father so and so, that's Father so and so, and I'm just like, whoa, that guy's a priest. You know what I mean? It's like it's so fucking out in the open, dude. Like he's just there yakking it up with the other seminarians, and he's, you know what I mean. He's like very flamboyant and shit. It's just like, wow, okay. And then you notice the gay seminarians as well. Like it's just so fucking obvious. And this is it. All I'll say is it's in the past decade. That's all I have to say. So this is
past
after all the
decade.
freaking Boston sex scandal and all this shit. Pennsylvania scandal. You know what I mean? It's still
Yeah.
happening. They're still letting these fucking predators in, man. And you're not going to convince me
Oh,
that it's okay for gay people to be in the seminary even if they're celibate. Nope. You got to get rid of them. It's so fucking obvious.
yeah. This is crazy.
Like literally you're seeing like the hetero guys, the seminarians, like clearly they're trying to survive. So they're just talking to the gay boys, and the gay boys, the gay seminaries they're just totally out, dude, at the seminary. And they're all just laughing. You know what I mean? Everybody's fake laughing. You know what I mean? That was the creepiest part.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm just like, this is not Catholic. This is not the Catholic Church. You see what I mean? And these are supposed to be priests. I was like, what the fuck is going on? It's like, anyway.
The people I deal
Terrifying.
with are either seminarians or a priest who were either abused or reprised.
Yeah, so you know when Conk comes in here and he's like, oh, it's not like that anymore. They're all conservative. And I'm like, dude, you're a fucking idiot. Like, you know what I mean? When I hear this type of gaslighting from people that are younger than me, and I'm just like, you guys you guys just don't know what you don't know. You guys don't have fucking experience. I'm older than you. I've been to these places. You haven't fucking been to these places. You're just fucking playing on your Xbox, dreaming about being a priest, but you don't know these people. Like you haven't. You're not even part of formation yet. What the fuck do you know?
You're not in the trenches. You don't know what the trenches look like.
Yeah, precisely. That's precisely what it is. It's like right before World War One, and you had all the people that were romanticizing what it would be to like fight on the front lines and be a patriot and fight for your country, and then they fucking get there and they see the brutality of what it really is, of the trenches, of the trench warfare. That's perfect.
Right,
It's
yeah.
like, Yoda
Grudgin
Grudgin.
content.
We're
Yeah,
going over
man.
the video that we went through last night.
Yeah, I know.
Against or reporting abuse, and uh, most of my work, centers really on seminaries and everything you just said about your concerns about what they have to go through. But it would be like, if I invited you to go with me to a gay bar, would you assume that I'm gay?
Sure.
Okay, now, how would you feel if you're straight and we're in this gay bar? Would you feel comfortable?
No, of course not. No.
Now, how does the straight guy today feel in a Catholic seminary? How does a Catholic priest feel in a diocese? Now, the only thing that offsets him today is the fact that in some dioceses, like LA, half the priests in LA today are foreign born. But the other half, vast majority of them are gay. And so if he's not foreign born and he grew up in a Catholic parish in the United States, he goes off to the seminary, even if he makes it through the seminary, how many friends is he going to have in the priesthood? Is he going to be promoted? Is he going to be made the vicar general someday or the superintendent of
We need
schools
a
or
lot to ties
recognized for his
Sub-Saharan
work?
Africa.
Or is he going to be treated like Father Mark White and Father Paul Kolchak? That's what awaits these guys. And so you're absolutely right in being worried about what the future holds for any young heterosexually oriented seminarian who thinks if he can just make it through the seminary, that everything's going to be smooth sailing, and it's not. It's only
No.
going to be as lonely, and you know what happens when people get lonely? The escape mechanisms, drugs, the sex, the alcohol,
Yeah.
whatever, and so it doesn't really set him up for success.
And even if you're even if the sexual orientation issue is not a problem with this person, if they are a squeaky wheel in any way, you're gonna, because I know priests who have seen problems in dioceses, and they're not necessarily of a sexual nature. Sometimes they're alcohol abuse or financial problems or just abusive situations between other priests. If you start reporting any of that, you're going to have problems as well.
Well, oftentimes these issues, these problems
Yep.
are not, separate. I mean, you have financial problems. I can't tell you the number of cases of priests who were found to have a priest in Greenwich, Connecticut, who was a Navy Reserve chaplain. I know was later on removed. He was found in Greenwich has money. Let me tell you, it's a wealthy area, and he was supporting a gay lover in Manhattan with an apartment and everything. So oftentimes they lead double lives, but to be able to lead those double lives, they need financial support, and oftentimes even with what they're making is not enough. So they dip into the church funds, And but again, too, if you are looking for a place to hide, you can lead a very closeted, very comfortable life in this parish, and you expect people to feel that, look, you've given up a wife and children to follow our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, Father. You're sacrificing this to serve us. No, 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 no. Hold it. I'm looking for a nice place. I can get these vacations. I could go to Myrtle Beach. I could go to Mykonos once a year. I could even take, Father so-and-so, my boyfriend, with me. And the people will say, oh, isn't it nice? Father John and Father Bill are going away on a vacation together.
Of course. Though
Oh
I want to
my
address this one
goodness.
thing. I wasn't going to talk about it, but you mentioned it with a large number.
That's what's really happening. The other thing that I can tell you that I know from experience is like the Jesuits. That's what they're doing. So the Jesuits, they like to tout themselves as taking vows of poverty, right? But what's the Jesuits are very smart. You know what I mean? Like they're supposed to be the most, academic of the Catholics, but they're also very financially literate. So they have all
Right.
of these like retreat centers everywhere. You get what I mean? So for Jesuits, they'll have sabbaticals as well. And so like every 7 years, 6 or 7 years, they're able to take like a whole year off where they just could just like travel around the world. And what that means is since
What
they
the
have
fuck?
yeah, since they have retreat centers all around the world, like in very prestigious places sometimes. Yeah. So they'll start
So
going to
for every 7 years for an entire year, they have no responsibilities?
yeah, that's called a sabbatical. I mean that for, educate I mean, people who have tenure in university have the same thing too, where they'll have like a sabbatical year. I mean, it's not just for recreation, but they could use usually what people do in academic setting. Like if let's say I'm like a tenured professor or something like this, and I'm gonna take a sabbatical year, then I could take that year to like go and do further education at a different education institution as a student. You know what I mean? Or
Okay,
work
that
on my
makes
grad school
sense.
stuff and like write work on my book. So that's what you're supposed to do, right? But for the
Right,
What
yeah.
I'm saying is that the Jesuits try to, that they have that same kind of like custom of university model too. So, but as a Jesuit, I can take a sabbatical year every like 6, 7 years or whatever. And but the thing about the Jesuits is because they're so very financially literate and they have a lot of territory around the world, they have all these retreat centers. Like I could like go to this part of the world and spend time there. I just have to like register internally. You know what I mean? Like the Jesuits have their own way of, but this I know from experience is that the Jesuits that I know of that are in the system, they'll talk about how like yeah, there are Jesuits that have boyfriends, and they'll tell me stories about how this particular priest on his sabbatical year, him and his boyfriend spent like 3 months here, then they went over here in Greece. You see what I mean? So this whole Mykonos stuff, that's not a he's not making Father Golmulka is not exaggerating. That's real. Like the Jesuits have retreat centers across in Greece, like multiple of them. So a lot of the times, the gay Jesuits take their boyfriends over to Greece, and they just travel the islands together. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's a like from the outside we're like, oh, they're priests and they're giving up on a married life and it's the life of sacrifice. Not for the gay dudes. See what I mean? For the gays, it's a fucking
I
lifestyle.
The alpha celibacy has been failed.
Yeah, it's just a
Like,
cover for all this gay shit. That's all it is.
I mean, I don't. I mean,
Like
like
I want to
it's
believe I want to personally I know the theology of celibacy. Like that's the whole argument for celibacy isn't on the practical
yeah.
issues but on the spiritual benefits, right? That, if I as a single heterosexual man, I'm going to sacrifice my married life so that I can live out my fatherly priesthood as a spiritual father. That's what celibacy allows me to do, right? That's the idea is that I'm going to
You know
through this
what?
sacrifice,
I
I'm going to put myself in a position where I'm asking God for more grace so that I could be a spiritual father and not just an earthly father. I want to believe in that, but that's just not the reality. I'm sorry.
I think for the you know the priests like just get rid of the oath of celibacy, like have them marry again, because we have an office that also takes an oath of celibacy. You know what I'm saying? It's the monasteries.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need like I know like
Well,
I
I've
think
heard
like I
some
think we're
really,
like
I've heard some really effed up stuff too about like certain monasteries and stuff in the U.S., especially the Dominican ones. There's
yeah.
some, there's like gay orgies and stuff that happen at the fucking Dominican House of Studies, dude. I've heard those.
Of
Dude, this
foreign-born
is
priests,
crazy.
but not only in the United States. I've heard from people that I know in Europe that that's the case over there as well. Is that um, a lot of times these foreign-born priests will serve their native populations that are in that country, and what I have heard is that those sort of communities have a great propensity towards abuse, especially in the United States, because you have the Hispanic community that is sometimes being served by a Hispanic priest, and there's a language barrier, of course, but then there's also just an unwillingness to report such things to authorities, because if you're here illegally, you're not going to report. And also, especially in Latin American cultures, there's an immense amount of support and reverence towards the church and also the priesthood. So I think the Catholic Church in the United States
So
has been very
they have
crafty
greater
because they
authority
know
to
they've
put
lost the native
mentalities
born
back.
population. They've abused
What the
their
flip?
children too much, and people have had enough. So in the United
That's what you
States,
think. It's not working.
the Catholic Church touts that it's growing, but it's growing because of immigration. And I think they've also found a community where they are going to be able to prey upon children more easily, and I think that's a big problem. So
Sex trafficking is a major problem in the Catholic Church today. The abuse victim whom I'm working with here in upstate New York was recruited to work as a priest with a Polish community in the United States. And what he found interesting was when he went to this hotel, to be interviewed.
a hotel.
Well, it was a hotel. They set up this place to have to meet with him. Okay, it wasn't a rectory, it wasn't a chancery. He went to this hotel,
Oh,
and when he went to the hotel, in the end, he was accepted. He said, "Well, you're smart. You'll be able. You speak Russian, German, French, and Polish,
Hold on.
so you'll be able to learn English pretty easily.
yeah.
You're smart. You get great grades."
Right. All right, I'm back.
All right.
Well, so and everyone said, guess what? You will be so successful. You'll maybe be a bishop one day in the United States. So he's accepted. He says, you're accepted. We're going to find you a diocese in the United States. Well, then before you go, we need to take some pictures of you.
Oh my God.
What he found interesting was they were taking full-length pictures of him from 4 different angles. Now, he couldn't understand. He said, why are you taking all these pictures of me like this? He says, well, when you get off the plane, then people will be able to recognize you. And then he thought to himself, he didn't say anything. He thought, well, hold it. How are they going to recognize me from my rear end? So he immediately, then he thought, well, hold it. Later on, years later, when he was being hit on and ultimately abused twice while he was in the United States before they got rid of him, he realized that, hold it, had he been fat or bald, he was young, good looking, fit, he worked out, but very heterosexual, mind you. He had a girlfriend even before he went to the seminary, but because he knew that being a priest would require celibacy, they did not become sexually involved, because he said if he could not lead a celibate life beforehand, how could he do it afterwards? But the point is that he found himself sex trafficked, and then he ended up in Buffalo. Now remember, Buffalo recruited when Mansell was here. Mansell worked with Father Gatto, who was the seminary rector, who was later on relieved for hitting on seminarians. Bishop Mansell, before he went to Hartford, developed the Columbian pipeline. Interestingly, that time, they recruited 15 from Columbia. Now, but get this, of those 15, almost all of them left. They were straight. They left. A lot of them joined the military, American military, to facilitate becoming American citizens, right? One of them was openly gay. He became, he became young meat for one priest, and in the process of their encounter, they had to take him to the hospital to have his rectum worked on because of the damage that was done. But the point is that they sex trafficked these kids, but then once they got here, they realized, hold it, they're not going to be young meat for these gay priests.
Yeah, I've noticed that there's a large number of dioceses in the United States who have, numerous seminarians that were imported from other countries. And yeah, it is worrisome for these young men, because especially if they came from an impoverished background, so they're leaving their home country, they're here in the United States, so they're really vulnerable at that point. I mean, they probably don't want to be sent back, but they're also just in a different country, so they're much more vulnerable than I would think maybe a native-born seminarian would be. So
I'm dealing right now with an Italian seminarian from Italy whose English wasn't that great. Okay, he's learning English, but he was abused by the rector of his seminary. He reported it, interestingly, immediately to the police in Brooklyn. But guess what the police did? They called up DiMarzio this time. DiMarzio, of course, who himself was accused of abusing 2 people, confronts him and says, why did you report it to the police? Well, he abused me. He should be in jail.
Exactly.
DiMarzio threw him out of the seminary and then sent a notice out throughout the diocese, do not take this kid in.
Yeah.
Of course, they did not want him talking about what happened to him in the seminary.
Yeah.
And remember, DiMarzio, who did he put in charge of the Safe Environment Program of the Brooklyn Diocese?
See how twisted this is?
Monsignor Otto Garcia.
Oh, well.
The same guy who came into the North American College when I was there, started massaging me in my room when I was studying for my finals.
Great.
And this is, so they put in, the Fox in charge of the.
So even Father Golmulka, right? He's even talking about his own experiences, how when he was studying in Rome, his rector was massaging him, right? It was like basically coming onto him. And so this was when Father Golmulka was younger, you know what I mean? Father Golmulka, like, he ended up teaching at the NAC as well, you know what I mean? So what I'm saying is that Father Golmulka, he's not only a Navy chaplain, but he's pretty credible, you know what I mean? He's not only worked at the Vatican, he's taught there, he's aware of all this happenings. He's also been accused himself of enabling these behaviors because he knew of priests that he wasn't aware were actual predators, but he like knew them as acquaintances. So like the people outside that knew that this priest was doing this shit to like other seminaries and other kids, uh, they just assumed that Father Golmulka knew about it when Father Golmulka didn't. You know what I mean? It's like it's that kind of scenario. That's how ubiquitous this shit is in the inside. But Father Golmulka, he's been like a staunch advocate for against clergy sex abuse and also for victims. Um, and he was like canceled like in the past 10 years or something because he started to make a big stink out of it. But anyway, sorry.
The penthouse.
Right.
Exactly. I'm going to try to bring this full circle. So we started to talk about Bishop Robert Barron. He's been called America's bishop by a lot of people. He's been compared to, he's probably turning over in his grave, the late Archbishop Sheen, but he really is the most, I would say, well-known bishop in the United States.
Dude,
And for all intents and purposes, he is the
the
face of the Catholic
Sheen,
Church in America.
videos I've seen.
Now, I think what me and Gene have talked about, there's some really serious, deep, ongoing issues in the Catholic Church, especially dealing with the abuse crisis. And has he really done anything to help reform the church? No, he hasn't. Because I think it's clear that if you become too vocal, yes, something like Bishop Strickland is in your future. So I think it's impossible to reform the church from within. This is my opinion. And I think you can't look at somebody like Bishop Barron, who presents himself well, and say, well, he's, doing his best, or he's trying to clean up the church. No, he's probably just a cog in the wheel, and he's part of the problem. So that's
This is
how-
what's so sad is so Joe Sciambra, right? I think you were here like a couple days ago when I was like mentioning
Yeah,
when we were watching his
the
first video.
Russian Orthodox that was cradle Catholic.
Yeah, so he was also a sex abuse victim. So he
Yeah.
knows this firsthand because he was groomed by a priest. Like he does recognize that he's gay, but he was molested by a kid or molested by a priest when he was younger, when he was a kid. And then, he became gay, did the whole gay lifestyle thing, and then he reverted back to Catholicism, right? And then he joined traditional, he became like a traditional Catholic, and then he was trying to, shed light on this whole sex abuse crisis thing, telling his story and trying to advocate. He has his own victim advocacy, organization now, right? Where, he tries to help, victims of clergy sex abuse and then, also talk about it publicly. And, he tried to get these victim stories out and get some sort of accountability for them. And it was just, he'd been the first time I heard about him was like back in 2016, 2017, right? And he had been trying to advocate and, try to get the bishops to respond and all this stuff, and it went nowhere basically. He just got stonewalled. And then eventually he fucking left because he got frustrated. That's what it's really sad when someone who was a cradle Catholic, went through the experience that he is, trying to live a holy life, and even he can't deal with the hierarchy anymore, so he becomes Russian Orthodox. It's a really sad state of affairs. He's trying to do the right thing and he can't.
And when I wrote that article, again, I tried if you notice, I started off by showing the good things that he wrote in the article.
Yeah.
Because when you started reading that, you said, "Oh, he's defending Barron. He's writing this article saying what a great bishop he is." But then as I continued on, then I couldn't help but try to show that, look, he's talking a good line, and a lot of people were taken, "Oh, what a wonderful bishop he is! What direction he's giving." But I'm saying, it's all smoke and mirrors. There's no substance to this. This man is not addressing. He's dealing with symptoms. He doesn't want to confront the causes and that's, remember, what Bishop Strickland did in November of 2018 when he addressed the bishops and said, "Hey guys, we have a problem." And when you see, any time when you address the fact that the church today has a large, an overwhelming number, with the majority of bishops, priests, and seminarians today are homosexuals. Immediately, you become a threat, and you have to be gotten rid of, because people like Barron and Subich and Tobin and McRoy and Dolan and others do not want to be outed. They do not want to be confronted for who they really are.
Of course. And I
Is
think
this gay video over
Barron
with that?
knows full well
Almost.
that the Roman Catholic
Almost.
Church is a top-down organization. But they
Yeah,
try
it's
to
almost over.
pretend that
My bad.
the priest abuse crisis was a bottom-up, that you had some renegade priests who, got out of control or whatever, bad priests, and that's sort of infected upward. No, this all started from the beginning. And I think you rightly point that out in the article that, I mean, I would argue that there were other pontiffs. I mean, we know about Pope John Paul II and his problems with the Legionnaires of Christ, and now we also know about Benedict and the problems that he was having with McCarrick. So I don't think it's exclusive to Francis, but I think you point that out. That
We do, and that's why even just today, because I'm fortunate, because I'm getting, the more I write, the more input I'm getting from all over the country. I'm getting information from people. Today, someone reminded me that this young man spoke with Bishop Weekland, Archbishop Weekland. Remember, who got in trouble in Milwaukee? He showed, and this was reported by Marcin Gutowski in that documentary that he released in Poland. According to him, Weekland in 1978, before Karol Wojtyła, whom I knew as a cardinal, whom I met in Rome, and who was in office when I was made a Monsignor, okay? Weekland, according to that source, in 1978, Weekland informed Karol Wojtyła about Theodore McCarrick. So not only did Archbishop Vigano say that he informed Francis in 2013 of McCarrick, but we have now Weekland saying that in 1978, even before Wojtyła became Pope John Paul II, that he informed him of McCarrick. So the problem is, yes, all the evidence shows that all three, as you're right, all three of the last pontiffs have covered up abuse. Not just Francis.
No. So thank you. I could keep talking, but thank you, Gene, for taking so much time to discuss this topic with me. Although I'm not Roman Catholic anymore, I'm Orthodox. I still have a heart for the Catholic. I'm not going to say the Catholic Church. I have a heart for Catholics because there's a lot of good people there. I think there's some good priests. I met a good bishop. I think Bishop Strickland's a good guy, but I just I wish everyone well. I do. To me, it doesn't look good. I especially in the hierarchy, I don't think there's any good guys, because the reason they're there, they're not a good guy, or they wouldn't be there. Now, occasionally, I guess a Strickland will that's a fluke. We'll get through, but he was taken care of in short order. So if they're there, they know something, and they ain't talking.
And if they do, they'll be treated like Dermot Martin. Do you know Dermot Martin?
No.
Dermot Martin was at my diaconate ordination at the North American College in 1973 in Rome. He was at that point a just newly ordained priest, Irish priest, okay? But he spent most of his priesthood working as a diplomat for the Vatican, because he was very gifted linguistically. Like, he worked in a Swiss German parish in Lucerne. So he's fluent in French, German, Spanish, Italian, English. So he spent most of his life working as a diplomat. But when everything exploded with the abuse in Ireland, just like it did in the United States in 2002 with the Boston Globe reports, when things exploded in Ireland, the Vatican tapped Dermot Martin, who was working in Geneva, representing the Vatican to the United Nations there, to go back to Ireland to be the Archbishop of Dublin.
Wow.
So he had credibility because he was never part of a cover-up. He was never a bishop there. He had nothing. There's no dirt on him. In other words, no one can say anything bad about Dermot Martin. Okay? But guess what? What did he do when he became the Archbishop of Dublin,
I don't know.
with all of this abuse he confronted? Well, you have to understand, the bishops hated him. You know why?
No.
Again, you had a very difference in sexual orientation between them. Dermot Martin opened up the Vatican, the archives of the Dublin Archdiocese to the Murphy Commission and released 80,000 documents.
Wow.
Well,
That's a
he
no-no.
was very, very much against abuse. He said we will, and he wanted to fire his 2 auxiliary bishops whom he inherited. The Vatican said, no, you got to keep them. Well, of course, from that moment on, Dermot Martin's career was stopped. And so when Francis was making all these cardinals, every time a new conclave was held, he is the Archbishop of Dublin, the largest see in all of Ireland. Nothing comes close to Dublin. Every time he was passed over by Francis.
Of course.
So what happens when you are someone like Dermot Martin and you address the abuse and you want to get to it, your history, you're gone. Also, before he left office, he refused to send his, there were quite a number of seminaries throughout Ireland, all over Ireland, right? Then they reduced it to 1 seminary, the whole country. But guess what? Dermot Martin did not want to send his seminarians there because he felt it was infested by all these homosexuals who were coming from being put there by all these other, gay bishops. He refused to send his seminarians there. He sent them to the Irish College in Rome. Because he did that, of course, he was not considered a team player, just like Strickland was not seen as a team player. And remember the bishop who was relieved by the Pope, Fernandez Torres in Puerto Rico. What did he do wrong? He also refused to send his seminarians to the interdiocesan seminary that he also felt was infested by a homosexual culture. So you see, if you look at all these bishops who accept being thrown out by the Pope, either not promoted like Martin or gotten rid of, you're going to see what the real root of the difference is between, these good priests and bishops and the others. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's the elephant in the room.
Yeah, it doesn't sound good. So, and I don't think I think a lot of Catholics are hoping that when Francis is gone, that there'll be a vast improvement. I don't think so because he's appointed most of the cardinals in the conclave. So whoever the next one is going to be like-minded. And none of them want to open the closet, so to speak, and show the skeletons because they'll be implicated as well.
Of course,
so.
Which one is not? I mean, how many people, look at the American media. Do you think did the American media report how much abuse Bergoglio covered up when he was the Archbishop? Did they mention, that before he went to the seminary, he was a bouncer, at a strip bar?
No.
I mean, they're not going to get into, did they say that he was alleged to have had sex, with Jesuit novices in Cordoba?
Yeah.
No, they're not going to report. They didn't report any of that.
No.
So are they going to? I mean, how many